Today, we bring you the 2012 American zombie apocalypse movie, Dead Season. A mysterious virus leaked from a laboratory and swept across the globe within days. A week later, no living souls could be seen in the cities, and the entire world fell into silence. Elvis was a doctor. Months before the outbreak, his wife had left with their son. To find them, Elvis embarked on a journey with a heavy heart. But when he arrived at his wife's residence, it had already turned into ruins. Perhaps he had witnessed too much death, or maybe deep down, he had already expected the worst. Elvis was not overly saddened. After burying his wife and child, he set out on a new journey. He did not know if he was the only one left in this world, but along the way, he encountered no other survivors. 62 days later, Elvis finally heard a human voice over the radio. The person on the other end could offer him a boat to sail to the end of the sea, but in exchange, he needed to provide supplies. Since things couldn't possibly get any worse, Elvis had no reason to refuse. Shortly after, he made contact with a woman named Tweeter over the radio. Tweeter had been living alone for a year, and recently she had taken in a 10-year-old boy. They arranged a meeting place over the radio.
Cause you some company.
Probably working our way down south soon.
Maybe we'll stop by your place for a beer or something.
Alright, we're going to pick some up because I'm all out.
You need anything else at the store?
Some whiskey. You've got my address.
A few nights later, based on the timing, Tweeter should have arrived soon. Before going to sleep, Elvis left a note on the door. The key is under the mat. Elvis never considered the possibility that the other party might be a fraud, nor did he think about the chance of encountering thieves or bandits. In the middle of the night, a sneaky figure boldly slipped in and took some of Elvis's already scarce canned food. Fortunately, the intruder triggered the alarm system. If those supplies were lost, he would lose his chance at getting the boat. When Elvis caught the thief, he was stunned. The intruder was a young woman. At that moment, a small boy's voice came from behind him. Elvis immediately realized their identities. Even so, he did not drive them away. The prolonged loneliness had become unbearable for him. Early the next morning, a message came through the radio. The boat was ready. After a day of travel, they finally arrived at the shipyard as night fell. After inspecting the supplies, the man handed them the key. Before leaving, Elvis kindly invited the man to join them, but he refused. Elvis looked at the map the man had given them. It pointed to a sparsely populated island. Just then, the boy opened a cabin they had not yet searched. Elvis and Tweeter never expected to find zombies inside. Although they quickly saved the boy and eliminated the zombies, he had already been bitten. The inevitable fate could not be changed. Tweeter could not bring herself to end his suffering and left the cruel task to Elvis. The boy did not resist, nor did he show fear. He simply sat quietly on the deck, waiting for the end to come. They were filled with guilt. Under normal circumstances, they would have thoroughly searched the boat, but since it was given to them by someone else, they subconsciously assumed it had already been checked. But now, it was too late for regrets. Early the next morning, just as the last drop of fuel ran out, the engine stopped. Fortunately, their destination had appeared. Elvis and Tweeter took what little supplies they had and swam to the island. Starving, they searched everywhere for fruit to eat, but whether it was coconuts or tomatoes, they had all rotted from the inside. Soon, they found a restaurant by the roadside, but the entire building was empty, and there was no food inside. Moments later, Elvis heard growls. A horde of zombies rushed into the restaurant. Just as they were cornered, a series of gunshots rang out, and the zombies fell one by one. Elvis thought they were saved, but then the gun was turned on them. After a night of interrogation the next morning, Elvis and Tweeter were taken to their captor's camp. The leader was named Kurt, a soldier. Before the apocalypse, he had been stationed on this island with his troops and family. But after the outbreak, many zombies washed ashore, causing them heavy losses. At that moment, including Elvis and Tweeter, only 16 people remained in the camp. If Elvis and Tweeter wanted to stay, they had to prove their worth. Elvis was a doctor, exactly what the camp was lacking. As for Tweeter, out of consideration for Elvis, Kurt gave her some time to integrate into the group. At that moment, an urgent distress call came through the radio. Confirm your location. This is a military base outside London. Zombies are running. I don't know why, but they die and then get back up, running incredibly fast. Listen carefully. We need to evacuate immediately. However, a voice from behind interrupted the man's thoughts. The group arrived at the place where Elvis had landed, only to find that their boat had disappeared. Upon returning to the camp, Kurt took Elvis to his daughter Rachel's room. At first, Elvis thought Rachel was physically unwell, but after speaking with her, he realized that her illness was caused by loneliness. Since the day her mother and sister passed away, Rachel had not left her room for 10 months. Aside from Kurt, no one spoke to her. Although there were 2 other women in the camp, their primary role was to take care of the men. 17-year-old Rachel was unwilling to interact with them. But now, with Tweeter's arrival, as long as Tweeter could keep Rachel company, she wouldn't have to live like the other women. The peaceful days were soon shattered. One day, a couple arrived on the island. The patrol team quickly found them. The man's wife had been injured in the dense forest. They went to check on her condition. Due to the complex terrain, they had to split up to keep watch, losing their advantage in the process. By the time they realized they were surrounded by a horde of zombies, it was too late. The dense foliage obstructed their vision. Some were bitten by zombies, while others were accidentally injured by their own teammates. Although Tweeter covered their retreat, allowing them to return to the base, the rescued woman turned into a zombie at that very moment. It was all in vain, and their teammates' lives had been lost for nothing. Kurt was furious. Compassion and kindness were noble virtues in times of peace, but in the apocalypse, they were deadly, not only endangering oneself, but also putting others at risk. After the funeral, Kurt and Elvis took the last bitten teammate to the shore. Kurt couldn't bring himself to do it, so the task naturally fell to Elvis, who did not share as deep an emotional connection with them. Even so, Elvis still felt guilty. After all, these people had not yet turned into zombies at this moment. That night, the lonely hearts of Tweeter and Elvis found solace in each other. In this apocalypse, they needed each other's support. Exhausted, Elvis soon fell asleep. Feeling bored, Tweeter started looking through the items in the room and found some videotapes in a cabinet. Curious, she played one of the tapes. It contained footage of virus research conducted after the outbreak. The researcher in the video was the camp's former doctor attempting to save a bitten teammate. In the video, the researcher said, "The amputation was successful, but unfortunately, whatever toxin is in the bite has already entered the bloodstream and it's too late. We need to obtain as much body tissue as possible. Each procedure requires 50 pounds of samples. I cannot determine the long-term effects of consuming this meat, nor can I confirm if someone who eats contaminated flesh will turn into one of them. These zombies seem to be growing increasingly aggressive. In the end, we will all become them." At that moment, Tweeter's attention was drawn to a man who had just appeared in the video. It was the same man they had traded supplies with for the boat. However, Tweeter did not tell Elvis about her discovery. The next day, Kurt went to the island's graveyard, where his wife and eldest daughter were buried. Though time could heal wounds, Kurt had never been able to move past his pain. To avoid experiencing that kind of loss again, he had forcibly kept Rachel locked in her room. But was that the right thing to do? Kurt himself didn't know. That night, Rachel secretly told Tweeter that her sister had built a sailboat, which was docked on the other side of the island. However, she hadn't been outside for a long time and wasn't sure if the boat was still there. Rachel hoped Tweeter could go check. If the boat was still there, it would be their only way off the island. More importantly, Rachel had a stash of supplies hidden away, enough for them to survive the journey. Kurt had secretly given them to Rachel. Although Tweeter didn't agree outright, having an extra escape route was always a good idea. On the other side, Kurt took Elvis to a secret location, known only to a few. After spending many days together, Kurt believed that Elvis was like him, and only people like them could survive in this apocalypse. It was a food processing facility. The island's fruits were unusable, and their only food source lay within the building before them. At that moment, the man who had fled with his wife was bound to an operating table. They needed fresh meat. The subject could not be allowed to die in the process, otherwise he would turn into a zombie, making the meat inedible. It was a difficult choice. Faced with life and death, Elvis chose to compromise. As a doctor, he knew how to extract as much viable meat as possible before the subject's heart stopped. From that day forward, Elvis became more silent with each passing day. His conscience tormented him, yet he tried to convince himself that this was the only way, that it was right. He wanted to confide in Tweeter, but he was afraid. Until one day, unable to suppress it any longer, Elvis told Tweeter the truth. The outcome was predictable. No matter the justification, there was no excuse for harming others. Elvis's actions left Tweeter deeply disappointed. Her cold words pierced through Elvis like knives. Watching Tweeter's figure disappear into the distance, Elvis fell into silence once again. Upon learning the truth, Tweeter decided to escape from this hopeless island. Following Rachel's map, she arrived at another dock. When she saw the sailboat, a weight lifted from her heart. But on her way back, she encountered one of Kurt's men. Facing the man's threats, Tweeter knew she was no match for him in this situation. She had no choice but to pretend to comply. Her act lowered the man's guard. Tweeter seized the opportunity and pierced the man's body with a sharp blade. As crimson blood sprayed into the air, the scent drew nearby zombies toward her. At the same time, Tweeter dashed toward the gate. The man she had just stabbed not only turned into a zombie, but also moved faster than the others. Although Tweeter used her weapon to force the guard to open the gate, their only line of defense was now gone. It was only a matter of time before the entire camp was overrun. Terrified, Tweeter found Elvis and told him what had happened. Now, they had to escape the island. To ensure Rachel's rescue, Elvis fired his gun to lure Kurt and his men away from the camp. Meanwhile, Tweeter snuck inside and reached Rachel's room. On the other side, upon seeing the overwhelming number of zombies, Kurt's men abandoned him and fled back to the camp, leaving only Kurt and Elvis behind. They did not intend to fight. Their goal was to close the gate and then eliminate the zombies behind them. But just then, the roar of an engine filled the air. Tweeter was driving a car straight toward the closing gate. By now, the entire camp had fallen. As more people turned into mutant zombies, the last remaining fighters met their end. At that moment, Kurt and Elvis arrived at the graveyard. Kurt handed a map to Elvis. He had just been bitten by a zombie and had no chance of escape. All he wanted was for Elvis to take care of his daughter in his place. Not long after, Tweeter and Rachel finally reached the dock. The path they had taken was now swarming with zombies. Just as they climbed onto the sailboat, a zombie followed them. Fortunately, Rachel noticed in time and eliminated the threat. Meanwhile, Elvis had also arrived at the dock. Ordinary zombies were not a threat to him, but he had to stop and deal with the mutant zombies behind him. As Elvis climbed aboard, Kurt appeared in their sight. Rachel looked at her father, who had always loved her deeply, and said nothing. At that moment, Elvis hesitated. His finger, which was about to pull the trigger, stopped. Perhaps it was because of everything Kurt had done. Or maybe he just wanted to let him watch, in silence as his daughter sailed away.